The call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday night, exactly 12 hours before my sister Emma's wedding was supposed to begin. I was sitting in my home office in my penthouse, reviewing quarterly reports from my hospitality empire, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hello, is this Victoria Martinez?" The voice was professional but clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, this is Victoria. Who's calling?" "This is Jennifer from Elegant Affairs Wedding Planning. I'm calling about tomorrow's Martinez-Thompson wedding at the Grand Ballroom." I set down my pen. Emma had chosen the Grand Ballroom, one of the most prestigious wedding venues in the city. I knew it well. I'd been quietly admiring its architecture and prime location for months before making my move. "What about it?" I asked, though something in Jennifer's tone already told me this wasn't a courtesy call. I'm very sorry to inform you that your parents have requested we remove you from the guest list. They've asked me to tell you not to come tomorrow." The words hung in the air. I wasn't surprised. My relationship with my family had been strained for years, but the method stung. Having the wedding planner deliver the message instead of telling me themselves was peak Martinez family behavior. "I see," I said calmly. "That's fine, but tell them something." "What would you like me to tell them?" I smiled, looking out at the city lights below. "The venue they booked. I own it. The flowers, catering, photography, music, everything they've planned for tomorrow? All mine." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, what?" "Jennifer, who do you think owns Elegant Affairs Wedding Planning?" Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her scrolling through contracts on her computer. The owner is listed as Grandview Hospitality Group." "That's right. And who owns Grandview Hospitality Group?" I don't." "Victoria Martinez." "Me. I own your company, Jennifer. I own the Grand Ballroom. I own Martinez Floral Design. Yes, the company with my family's name that they hired for the flowers. I own Prestige Catering, Harmony Wedding Photography, and Symphony Strings. Every single vendor they've booked for tomorrow works for me." The silence stretched on for nearly a minute. "Ms. Martinez, what should I do?" I glanced at my watch. It was now 9:52 p.m. "Jennifer, at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning I want you to cancel everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the music, the photography, all of it. Send the cancellation notices to my parents and Emma directly." "But Ms. Martinez, the wedding is tomorrow. We can't just." "We can and we will. Check your employment contract, Jennifer. Section 12. Subsection C clearly states that Grandview Hospitality Group reserves the right to cancel any event with less than 24 hours notice in cases of client misconduct or breach of terms." I could hear her typing frantically. I found it, but client misconduct? Discrimination against family members of the company owner qualifies as misconduct. They've violated our anti-discrimination policy. It wasn't entirely true, but it didn't need to be. When you own every piece of the puzzle, you get to decide how they fit together. After I hung up with Jennifer, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled into my leather chair. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had spent years treating me like I was nothing, never bothering to ask what I did for work or how I could afford my lifestyle. They assumed I was struggling, maybe working some dead-end job, certainly not successful enough to warrant their attention or respect. They had no idea that the quiet, dismissed daughter they barely acknowledged had built a hospitality empire worth $340 million. It started 7 years ago when I graduated with my MBA. While Emma was planning her sorority parties and my brother Miguel was bouncing between startup ideas that never launched, I was working 80-hour weeks at a boutique investment firm. I lived in a studio apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and saved every penny I could. My first acquisition was a struggling catering company on the verge of bankruptcy. I bought it for $180,000, my entire savings, and spent the next 2 years turning it around. I learned everything: food costs, labor management, vendor relationships, client service. I worked holidays, weekends, 16-hour days. While my family was posting Instagram photos from their vacations, I was building something real. From there, I started acquiring other struggling businesses in the events industry. A photography studio drowning in debt. A floral design company whose owner wanted to retire. A small venue that couldn't compete with the bigger players. One by one, I bought them, fixed them, and integrated them into what became Grandview Hospitality Group. The wedding industry is perfect for vertical integration. When you own the venue, the catering, the flowers, the photography, and the planning services, you control the entire customer experience and capture every dollar of profit. My clients loved the convenience of one-stop shopping, and I loved the margins. 3 years ago, I made my biggest acquisition, the Grand Ballroom itself. The previous owners were aging and ready to sell. I paid $12 million for the property, then spent another $3 million on renovations. It became the crown jewel of my portfolio. Booked solid for 2 years in advance, commanding premium prices. My family never asked about any of it. When I moved to a luxury penthouse, they assumed I was renting and probably couldn't afford it. When I started wearing designer clothes, they figured I was putting it on credit cards. When I drove up in my new BMW, my father actually made a comment about young people and their financial priorities. They never asked because they never cared. I was the daughter who didn't follow the expected path. Emma became a marketing manager at a prestigious firm. Miguel worked in tech consulting, both respectable white-collar careers they could brag about to their friends. I was just Victoria, doing something vague with events that they never bothered to understand. The distance between us grew wider after I missed Emma's engagement party last year. I was in Chicago, closing a deal to acquire 2 more venues, but I didn't explain that to them. I just said I couldn't make it. Emma accused me of not caring about family. Mom said I was becoming selfish. Dad wondered aloud if I was going through something. None of them bothered to ask what was so important that I'd miss a family event. They just assumed I was being difficult. The final straw came 3 months ago at Miguel's birthday dinner. I arrived straight from a client meeting, still in my business suit, and sat quietly while they discussed their lives, their jobs, their plans. When the conversation finally turned to me, Mom asked if I was still doing that party planning thing. Event management, I corrected. Same thing, Emma laughed. Victoria plans birthday parties for a living. Actually, I started to say, but Dad cut me off. The important thing is that you're happy, he said in that condescending tone parents use when they think their child has made disappointing life choices. Not everyone needs to be successful in the traditional sense. That's when I realized they would never see me as anything more than their underachieving daughter. It didn't matter what I built or accomplished. They had decided who I was, and that was that. So I stopped trying. I stopped attending family dinners. Stopped calling on birthdays. Stopped pretending we had the kind of relationship where they cared about my life or I cared about their approval. Which brought us to tonight. At 6 a.m. sharp, I was already awake, coffee in hand, when Jennifer called. Ms. Martinez, I've sent all the cancellation notices. The venue is closed, catering is cancelled, flowers won't be delivered, photography is off, and the string quartet has been reassigned to another event. Good. How are they taking it? Your mother has called me 17 times. She's not happy. I could imagine. Mom prided herself on her event planning skills. She'd coordinated charity galas and fundraisers for years. Having her daughter's wedding implode 12 hours before the ceremony would be her worst nightmare. What did you tell her? Exactly what you instructed. That the event was cancelled due to a violation of our client conduct policy. And she demanded to speak to the owner of the company. I smiled. And what did you say? I gave her your number. Perfect. My phone started ringing at 6:23 a.m. Victoria. What is this nonsense about the wedding being cancelled? Good morning, Mom. I heard you had some venue troubles. Don't play games with me. That wedding planner said something ridiculous about you owning the venue. Fix this right now. I can't fix it, Mom. The event was cancelled due to a policy violation. What policy violation? We paid our deposits, we followed all their rules. You excluded a family member of the business owner from the guest list. That violates our anti-discrimination policy. There was a pause. I could hear Dad in the background asking what was happening. Victoria, what are you talking about? Family member of the business owner. Mom, I own Grandview Hospitality Group. I own the Grand Ballroom, Elegant Affairs Wedding Planning, Martinez Floral Design, Prestige Catering, and every other vendor Emma booked for today. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Richard. Mom finally screamed. Richard, get on the phone. I heard fumbling, then Dad's voice. Victoria, your mother is hysterical. What's this about you owning the wedding venue? It's not just the venue, Dad. It's everything. The entire wedding industry infrastructure Emma hired. I built it. Every flower arrangement, every photo, every canopy, every note of music. It all flows through companies I own. That's impossible. You plan parties. I built a $340 million hospitality empire. But you never asked, so you never knew. Another long pause. This is ridiculous, Dad said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Even if that were true, you can't just cancel your sister's wedding. People are flying in from out of town. We've spent $80,000 on this event. You spent $80,000 at my company's, Dad. And you excluded me from my own sister's wedding. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? Emma's voice came on the line. She must have grabbed the phone. Victoria, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop. My wedding is in 6 hours. No, Emma. Your wedding was scheduled for 6 hours from now. Past tense. You can't do this. You can't ruin my wedding because your feelings got hurt. I'm not ruining anything. I'm simply choosing not to provide services to clients who discriminate against my family. We are your family. Funny. You didn't seem to think so when you decided I wasn't welcome at your wedding. I could hear crying in the background. Probably Mom. Dad was talking rapidly to someone else, likely trying to call other venues. Victoria. Emma's voice was breaking now. Please. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry we uninvited you. Just, please fix this. I'll do anything. For a moment I felt the old familiar pull. The desire to smooth things over, to be the accommodating sister who sacrificed her own needs to keep the family peace. But then I remembered 17 phone calls to my employee instead of one call to me. I remembered years of dismissal and condescension. I remembered party planning, and not everyone needs to be successful in the traditional sense. Emma, I want you to think about something. You've known me for 28 years. You've never once asked what I do for work. Never asked how I can afford my apartment or my car or my lifestyle. You just assumed I was struggling and left it at that. Even when your wedding planner told you I owned the venue, your first instinct wasn't to call me. It was to call Mom and Dad to fix it for you. Victoria, please. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to spend today at my beach house in Santa Barbara. You remember the one you thought I was house-sitting? I'm going to enjoy the sunshine and the ocean and the peace and quiet. You're going to figure out what kind of relationship we actually want to have going forward. But the wedding can be rescheduled for any date you choose. All you have to do is call me directly, not Mom, not Dad, not the wedding planner, and ask, nicely, like you would ask someone whose help you actually need. I hung up. 20 minutes later my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Victoria, I'm sorry. We were wrong to exclude you. Would you please help us reschedule the wedding? I typed back, I'll think about it. Enjoy your Saturday. Then I turned off my phone, packed a bag and drove to Santa Barbara. The beach house was my first major personal purchase after the Grand Ballroom acquisition. 4,000 square feet of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. I'd bought it as an investment, but it had become my sanctuary. The place where I could think clearly, away from the noise of the city and the complications of family. I spent the morning on the deck, reading financial reports and drinking coffee while the waves crashed below. Around noon, I allowed myself to wonder how the day was going for Emma. Had they found another venue? Were guests showing up to a locked ballroom? Were my parents frantically calling every event space in the city? Part of me felt guilty. I wasn't a vindictive person by nature. I'd built my business on relationships and reputation, not on burning bridges. But another part of me felt liberated. For the first time in years I'd set a clear boundary and enforced it. My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls and texts, but I'd left it inside. When I finally checked it around 2 p.m., I had 47 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most were from family, Mom, Dad, Emma, Miguel, even a few cousins and aunts who'd apparently been recruited to help change my mind. But there were also messages from Jennifer and several other employees, asking for guidance on how to handle the situation. One text caught my attention. It was from Emma, sent at 1:15 p.m. Victoria, I know you're angry and you have every right to be. I found a small venue that can accommodate 50 people tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's not what I planned, but it's what I can get on short notice. The question is, will you come? Not as the business owner who controls everything, but as my sister? I'm asking you directly like you said. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. This was what I'd wanted. Direct communication, acknowledgement, respect. But was it genuine or just desperation? I called Jennifer. Ms. Martinez. Thank goodness. The phones have been ringing all day. Your family, the guests, other vendors asking what happened. Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. I want you to organize a small wedding for tomorrow at 2 p.m. 50 people maximum. Simple but elegant. Where? Every decent venue in the city is booked on Sunday. Use the private dining room at the Grand View Tower. The one on the 40th floor with the city views. The Grand View Tower was my newest acquisition. A boutique hotel I'd bought 6 months earlier. The private dining room was typically reserved for corporate events and high-end private parties. Ms. Martinez, that room costs $15,000 for a half-day rental. No charge for this event. And Jennifer? I want you to personally handle every detail. Best flowers we have, premium catering menu, professional photography. Spare no expense. Should I tell your family you're handling this? No. Just tell them you found a venue that had a last-minute cancellation. Let them think they got lucky. I hung up and texted Emma back. Your new venue is confirmed for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Address will be sent to you tonight. I'll be there. Her response came immediately. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. We'll talk after the wedding. That evening, I drove back to the city and spent 3 hours at Grand View Tower, personally overseeing the setup. The room was transformed, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views, white roses and eucalyptus arranged in elegant centerpieces, soft lighting that would be perfect for photos. It was intimate and sophisticated, everything Emma had actually wanted but couldn't articulate when she'd been focused on booking the biggest, most impressive venue possible. The next day, I arrived at the wedding 15 minutes early, wearing a navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, elegant but not attention-grabbing. I wanted to blend in, to be Emma's sister rather than the business owner who'd rescued the event. The transformation in my family was immediate and obvious. Mom rushed over the moment she saw me, her eyes red from crying. Victoria, honey, I'm so sorry. We should never have. Mom, let's talk after the ceremony. Today is about Emma. But Emma herself appeared beside us, radiant in her dress but with a nervousness I'd never seen before. Victoria, I need to say something before we start. Emma, you don't need to. Yes, I do. She took my hands. I've been thinking all night about what you said. About never asking what you do, never really seeing you. And you're right. I've been so focused on my own life, my own success, that I never bothered to understand yours. She gestured around the room. This place is incredible. The flowers, the setup, everything, it's more beautiful than what I originally planned. And somehow you made it happen in 12 hours. Jennifer did most of the work. Jennifer works for you. This is your business, your vision, your success. And I never saw any of it because I never looked. I felt tears starting, which was not part of my plan for the day. Emma, I want to understand. After today, after we get back from our honeymoon, I want you to show me your business. I want to know who my sister really is. The ceremony was beautiful. Simple and heartfelt, with the city spreading out below us through the windows. Emma and David exchanged vows they'd written themselves, speaking about partnership and understanding and really seeing each other. I wondered if Emma was thinking about our conversation when she promised to always pay attention to the people she loved. During the reception, Dad approached me while I was standing by the windows, watching the sun set over the city. Victoria, I owe you an apology. Dad. No, let me say this. I've been thinking about yesterday, about the things you said. About us never asking about your work, your life. And I realized you're right. We made assumptions and we were wrong. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the skyline. $340 million? That's the current valuation, yes. And you built it yourself? From nothing. From an $180,000 catering company that was about to go bankrupt. He shook his head slowly. I don't understand how we missed it. How we missed you. You missed it because you weren't looking. You decided who I was supposed to be and you never checked to see if that was actually who I became. You're right. And I'm sorry. The evening continued with small conversations like that. Family members approaching me with curiosity instead of dismissal, asking real questions about my business, my life, my plans. Miguel was particularly fascinated by the acquisition strategy and wanted to know if I ever invested in tech startups. A few cousins asked if I was hiring. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of the family rather than someone they tolerated. But the most important conversation came at the end of the night, when the guest had left and the staff was cleaning up. Emma, still in her wedding dress, sat beside me on the couch in the corner of the room. Victoria, I have a question. What's that? Yesterday when you cancelled everything, were you trying to teach us a lesson or were you just done with us? It was a good question and I considered it carefully. Both, I think. I was definitely done with being treated like the family disappointment. But I also wanted you to understand that actions have consequences. You can't dismiss someone for years and then expect them to be available when you need something. And now I'm hopeful. Today felt different. You felt different. Emma nodded. I want things to be different. I want to be the kind of sister who knows what her sister does for work, who celebrates her successes, who includes her in important things. That would be nice. There's one more thing. Emma looked nervous again. David and I are planning our honeymoon and we wanted to ask, do you have any recommendations? You seem to know the hospitality industry pretty well. I smiled. I might have a few ideas. Where were you thinking? Somewhere tropical. With great food and maybe some activities. Budget isn't really an issue. We saved for 2 years. How do you feel about Maui? I know a resort there that might work perfectly for you. You know a resort? I own a resort. The Grand View Maui. It's all-inclusive, adults only, right on the beach. I could arrange something special for you. Emma stared at me. You own a resort in Maui? Among other things. Victoria, exactly how big is your business? I laughed. Emma, we have a lot to catch up on. 3 weeks later, Emma and David returned from their honeymoon with tans and stories and a completely different perspective on their family dynamic. Emma called me the day after they got back. Victoria, we need to talk. How was Maui? Incredible. The resort was perfect, the staff treated us like royalty, and the suite you arranged was better than anything we could have imagined. But that's not why I'm calling. I waited. I did some research while we were there. I looked up Grandview Hospitality Group. Victoria, you don't just own some wedding venues and a resort. You own hotels, restaurants, catering companies, event spaces. You have properties in 12 states. 15 states now. I acquired a boutique hotel chain in Colorado last week. And the revenue numbers I found online. Are those accurate? Probably not. Most of those websites underestimate. Victoria, you're rich. Like seriously rich. I'm comfortable. You're worth more than our entire extended family combined. I didn't respond to that, mostly because it was true. Why didn't you ever tell us? Emma, when would I have told you? At Miguel's birthday when you laughed about me planning parties? At Christmas when Dad made comments about my financial priorities? At family dinners where no one asked me a single question about my life. She was quiet for a long time. You're right. We never gave you the chance. It's not about giving me a chance, Emma. It's about basic curiosity about someone you claim to love. You know what Mom's favorite flowers are, Dad's golf handicap, Miguel's latest project. But you never knew what I did for work, where I lived, or what mattered to me. I want to know now. I'm glad. But it's going to take time to rebuild this. And we did rebuild it slowly. Emma started calling me once a week, not because she needed something but just to talk. She asked about my business, my goals, my challenges. She introduced me to her friends as her sister who owned a hospitality company, with pride in her voice instead of dismissal. Mom and Dad took longer to adjust, but they made the effort. Dad started reading business journals so he could ask informed questions about my industry. Mom stopped making comments about my lifestyle choices and started asking for my advice when she organized charity events. Miguel surprised me the most. 6 months after the wedding, he approached me with a business plan for a tech platform that could streamline hotel operations. Instead of just asking for money, he'd done months of research, identified specific problems in my industry, and developed a solution. I ended up investing $2 million in his startup. Not because he was family, but because it was a genuinely good business opportunity. The wedding that almost didn't happen became the turning point in our family relationships. Not because I used my business leverage to force respect, but because the crisis finally made everyone realize how disconnected we'd become. A year later, Emma asked me to be the maid of honor at her friend's wedding. The venue? The Grand Ballroom, of course. But this time I was there as her sister, not as the owner of the building. Though I did make sure the flowers were perfect. As I stood beside Emma at the altar watching her friend exchange vows, I thought about power and family and the difference between being heard and being seen. Money and business success had given me the power to cancel a wedding, but they couldn't force genuine relationships. That required something much harder: the willingness to be vulnerable enough to start over. The crisis had been necessary. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can rebuild it properly. And sometimes the person everyone thinks has the least power is actually the one holding all the cards. But the real victory wasn't in demonstrating that power. It was in choosing to use it to bring people together rather than drive them apart. The wedding ended with dancing and laughter, with family photos that included everyone, with plans for next Sunday's dinner at my penthouse. Emma stayed late to help with cleanup, asking questions about event management and vendor relationships, genuinely interested in understanding the business I'd built. "Victoria," she said as we folded tablecloths together, "I have one more question." "What's that?" "If we ever plan another family event, will you help us with the arrangements?" I smiled. "Emma, all you ever had to do was ask."